Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Well, hello, everybody. It's Lynda Lippin here, your host for the Pilates Goddess podcast. Welcome back one more time. Now, you may have noticed if you've been a regular listener for the last year or so, that the past couple of weeks I've been a little spotty in my uploads. I need to let you know that I've had a lot of personal stuff going on where I've needed to literally contact my elected government officials to help me get through to some federal government, state government, and local government agencies to handle a few things. This process has made me extraordinarily exhausted and frustrated, but life happens. And I took a little time for my own self-care and well-being so that I could come back to you fresh and renewed with some great information. And to make up for last Thursday's missed episode, you're going to get 3 this week. That's right. You're getting 3 episodes this week starting now. So I'm still fielding a lot of questions about Pilates training and Pilates certifications, but I'm also seeing a lot of extraordinarily concerning comments and questions online about Pilates training and certification. I am also seeing a lot of questionable training and titles on people's CVs that they're submitting to me for hiring for Bermuda. And I feel like in this episode, we need to address making sure that you take care of yourself and your hireability moving forward when you're looking at Pilates certification. One thing you need to know is that Pilates certification programs were not a thing at all, until maybe 25 years ago. Prior to then, we apprenticed. Like literally, you found a teacher who you loved, who was willing to let you kind of hang out with them in the studio, who was willing to share their notes, share their knowledge, share their wisdom. And you basically just hung in there. You took a lot of classes, a lot of privates, did a lot of observation, let them watch you teach. And then when they felt like you were ready to roll, they would start to allow you to apprentice teach clients in the studio, and then ultimately would give you the good to go for teaching out in the world. And it used to be that when you went into a Pilates studio to be hired, you literally told them who you trained with because you didn't even always have a certificate, right? And they would be like, yay or nay. Yeah, I love them or I don't. And then they would have you teach, a practice session and move forward. That's not the case anymore. A lot of that changed during the lawsuit over the name Pilates. And also a lot of it changed with the huge growth of the Pilates market, and particularly of the Pilates equipment market. So as we started to see different equipment manufacturers come to the front, and I'm talking about like the major manufacturers, your Balanced Body, your Peak, your Stotts, those folks. At some point, they started offering their own certification programs. And I know a lot of the teachers actually who teach in the certification programs for Balanced Body, for Peak, for Stott, for different groups. And they're great teachers. And yes, the training is comprehensive, but there's a few things to watch out for. Number one, you want to make sure that you are not just getting equipment specific training. And we'll talk about why in a second. But I'm letting you know that every manufacturer has like different numbers of springs, has different color codes for their springs, has sometimes slightly different or hugely different variations in sizing on things, like on the long or short box, literally on the carriage, on the length of machines, on the width of machines, on how long the bars are. And this affects the work for the client, right? Because the Pilates exercises and the official forms of the exercises were made for a specific weight spring and a specific width of the poles and a specific height of the eye bolts. And if everybody does a different thing, then you lose that ability to have training that kind of allows you to work on all of the apparatus that's out there, no matter who made it, and deal with the springs. So that's one issue. The second issue is that we also have a lot of chain studios now, franchise studios. We have Club Pilates. If we move into the not quite Pilates range, you've got SLT, you've got Solid Core, you've got things like that. And what ends up happening there is, again, their teacher training, while it may be comprehensive, is geared to that specific audience. So if you're at Club Pilates and you take their teacher training, they're teaching you specifically for how to run a level 1, a 1A, a 2, a 2A, whatever those classes look like, and teach large groups, which means that you're going to have some different kind of cueing happening, which means the hands-on might be a little bit different, which also means that there are going to be some exercises that don't even get taught because they are not safe to teach in a large group of 12 people on the equipment. So, now another side to this, and I'm going to pull this all together at the end, I promise. Another side to this is that we now see studios, physical therapy clinics, gyms who say only have reformers or only have mat and spring wall or only have whatever it is that they have. And so now I notice that there's a lot of teacher training that's happening in modules, and you don't have to take all of the modules, right? So you can just learn mat, or you can just learn reformer, or you could just learn tower spring wall, or, whatever that looks like. And the issue with that is that if you want to at some point teach in a Pilates studio that has all of the equipment, you won't be able to, because you won't have a piece of paper saying that you know the rest of the apparatus and those exercises. So when you're looking at starting your Pilates teacher training journey, you want to, number one, think about, do I actually want to teach Pilates after this? Some people don't. I have known several people who have been Pilates clients who wanted to learn the work for themselves on a deeper level. Maybe they were moving someplace where there wasn't going to be a lot of equipment. They wanted to be able to take care of themselves and maybe some close friends and a few family members. And so they do the certification, not because they want to teach in a studio or for their career, but for themselves. And in that kind of situation, I recommend that you go with the Pilates you know. So oftentimes what will happen is you'll be in a studio, you'll do the work, you will love the work, you'll work with a number of different teachers, you'll still love the work. You'll then notice that the studio has teacher training, and you kind of segue into that, right? So that's one way that people go about it. But a lot of times it's because you've taken some Pilates, you like it, and you feel like, maybe this is a good way to make some money. The studios seem to always need teachers, right? And then I can be hired. So if that is the scenario that you're looking at, here are some considerations. Number one, I would not necessarily go brand specific. Okay. And the reason for that is that ultimately you want to be able to teach on anything. I mean, seriously, I've had teachers when I used to hire for Parrot Key, teachers would say to me, well, what kind of equipment do they have there? Because I only like to teach on X brand. And when I would say, well, that's not the brand that we have, the teachers would then say, oh, okay, and kind of take their CV out of the running. And I always thought that was such a shame, because if you know how to teach Pilates, you should be able to walk into seriously any studio, feel out the weight of the springs, look at the equipment, and figure out what you need to do to mimic the way you would teach on your home equipment or your studio's equipment. I also recommend that you save up, suck it up, and do a comprehensive training. If you can't do a comprehensive training right away, do a mat training. Try to find a classical mat training. Power Pilates offers it. Real Pilates offers it. Many places offer it. The Pilates Method Alliance, the National Pilates Certification Program, actually recognizes mat-only certification right now. And that's kind of a good way to get into the program. But then, if you want to continue on and learn the apparatus, once again, I do not recommend that you learn the apparatus separately. And the reason for that is that Pilates is a system of exercises. Within the studio, you will often see the exact same exercise being done on different pieces of equipment. And the reason for that is that those exercises feel and work very differently depending on whether the spring is in front of you, above you, whether the spring is below you, whether you're kneeling or standing, whether the carriage is moving or you're pulling on a spring that's just fixed to a wall. So that's the only thing that's moving. There is a whole host of differences. And essentially, when you learn, say, beginner or level 1 Pilates, you learn the mat, you learn the reformer, you learn the Cadillac, you learn all of the things that go into that system that then helps prepare people's bodies for the next level. So for example, if you're, say, reformer mat certified, and you never teach a kneeling chest expansion because people start to fall and you don't know what to do with that. So you just either take it out or you completely modify it to have them sitting on the box. That's because you don't know that you could go over to the Cadillac, the tower, the spring wall. You could do that standing. You could do that kneeling. You could do it in a place that's safer where the carriage isn't moving. But if you don't know the whole system, you don't know that. You have no idea of the number of times that I have taken a client off of a piece of equipment where they were struggling, brought them to a different piece of apparatus in the studio, had them do the exact same exercise, be successful, and oftentimes within the same session go back and do the more difficult version once their body understood what needed to happen. Okay. And that requires an understanding of the entire Pilates system, and then how all of these pieces of apparatus kind of work together to help the client, okay? And to help you. Because if you're struggling to teach a client someplace, oftentimes in a full studio situation, there is another place you can easily go and do the same thing in a much easier way. To not have a comprehensive training is just silly to me. Seriously. If you're going to spend the time, if you're going to spend the money, do it well. And if you think about it, it's this, even if you want to specialize, even if you're like, but I only want to do rehab Pilates, or I only want to teach people in sports, or I only want to do this. Number one, that may be what you want to do right now. In 30 years, you might want to do something completely different, right? Feeling me on that one? And number two, like, if you want to be a dermatologist or you want to be a neurosurgeon, you still have to go complete medical school. You still have to become a licensed physician before you can take any board certification exams and do any of that training. And within Pilates, it's not that way. Within Pilates, you can learn whatever you want. But the issue is that going to be great for you long term? Will it be great for your clients long term? And will you be able to get a job? Okay, this is the important thing to think about. So, as somebody who hires for other studios, here's what I look for. So, what I look for is comprehensive training, okay, with pieces of paper. And then I'll look for specialty training over that. But even if somebody doesn't have specialty training, as long as they've got a good basic comprehensive training, so I know that they know the beginning to the advanced work, they know some pre-Pilates, and they know how to work people within the entire studio system, I am happy. Sometimes I'll look at people's certifications and people's titles, and they'll say things like, I am a master classical Pilates teacher. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. And then I go down to look at their qualifications, and they're only certified in mat and reformer. And I was like, how can you be a master Pilates teacher if you only know this little teeny tiny bit of the system? Yeah. Are there hundreds of exercises you can do, modify, and vary between just the mat and reformer? Of course there are. But that is still a little tiny chunk of the Pilates system. So that doesn't work. I also look to see that, even if somebody is trained in a specific, say, equipment manufacturer style, that they have spent time working on other brands of equipment. And that's easy to do, my friends. I'm sorry. Like, go online, go to the Google, and type in Peak Pilates Studios, whatever your city is. And you will get a list of studios that have Peak Pilates equipment. So if you want to try to work on that and you've only been trained in STOT, whatever, go to that studio. If you've got classical studios around you that have grots or Pilates designs or, any of the old school equipment, find them, go take some classes and sessions and feel out what it feels like to work on 4 of the same heavy springs instead of 5 variable springs. What it feels like to work on a reformer with no ball bearings in the wheels as opposed to lots of ball bearings in the wheels. What it feels like to work on a Cadillac that might be a little narrower and with springs that are a little bit heavier than what you are used to. If you only know classical, get out there, take some balanced body, take some peak, take some STOT, feel out what those different brands feel like so that a job opportunity comes up in Thailand and you've always wanted to go and you're single and you apply and they're like, well, we only have like stot equipment and that's it. And you can then safely say, I know how to work on that equipment, even though my certification might be from someplace else. Remember that your certification, that initial training, gives you the basis of what you're going to do moving forward, but you're going to need plenty of continuing education as well. So if you know you want to do rehab, I don't recommend necessarily that you do a rehab specific certification at the beginning. I recommend that you do a good basic, all level, comprehensive Pilates certification, and then start taking workshops in your specialties. Online, I've got all kinds of workshops I teach that are pre-recorded. I've got workshops for back pain, for neck pain, for shoulder pain, for prenatal, for postnatal, for diastasis recti, for all kinds of things. Lots of the master teachers in the world have these available. You can do all the continuing education to get specialized after you do your initial certification. I have seen recent posts from teachers who say certified in a rehab oriented facility and now we're out in the world trying to teach and they have no idea how to put together a beginning, intermediate, or advanced workout on mat or the equipment because they weren't taught that. They were taught, here's what you do for the herniated disc, and here's what you do after the hip replacement, and here's what you do for the neck thing, but they were never actually taught the system. So here they are, fully comprehensively certified with the piece of paper out in the world, not even knowing how to put together a beginning mat class. That, my friends, is a shame. That, my friends, is a crime, actually, and should not be happening. It's also important to not necessarily certify, as I've said before, in a workout specific training or a chain specific training. So, again, I look for that. So when I look at a teacher and they've only been certified by Club Pilates, even though it says it's a comprehensive 500-hour training, I know for a fact that they're being trained and groomed to teach these larger reformer sessions and flows. So they are being taught exercises that are actually not Pilates, but that are part of the Club Pilates exercise list. And there are some exercises that they're not being taught because they are inappropriate to teach in a group. So I can't take those teachers either, because they are not going to be comfortable and the clients won't be comfortable with them teaching in a comprehensive studio environment. So really, when you're looking at teacher training, you need to be thinking about you and not just you in the moment, not just the broke you that's trying to find the cheapest training that you can, because that's not going to work. You need to be sitting there thinking, what do I want to do with this Pilates certification? Do I want to be out in the world really comfortably calling myself a Pilates teacher who is comprehensively trained? Do I want to be able to teach in studios anywhere? Do I want to be able to teach classes as well as groups? Would I like a sense of how the system works comprehensively to help support clients and teachers? Yes. And then, I was in a position for years when I was teaching in a studio that had no Cadillac or no tower. I was teaching reformer. I was teaching chair. I finally got springs for the yoga wall, some leg springs, some arm springs, a rollback bar. And then ultimately I got myself a Cadillac, but it took, a while for them to see the value of getting me a Cadillac. So I didn't teach on one. I was fine with that because I'm comprehensively certified. So I can put programs together however you want me to put them together. And that's the difference. So instead of then coming to the market being like, this is all I teach, this is all I know, I can't touch these other things, you're coming to the market with, I can do it all. And I can do it all on multiple brands of apparatus. And I've got, say, some specialty training because I did some continuing education afterwards. So I can deal with back pain and arthritis and whatever else. Then you're going to be very hireable. In fact, if you even look at the chain studios, they are all about hiring comprehensively certified instructors from other training programs because they would like to have comprehensively certified teachers. So that's about it for me today. I know it's a lot, but your main takeaways from this are, if you're going for your Pilates certification and you don't have a lot of money and you just want to get started and teach some classes and start to understand the body and the exercises, go for a mat training. But if you know that moving forward, you want to teach the whole system, you like the whole system, then you need a comprehensive Pilates certification that takes you from beginner to advanced on all of the equipment. If you end up having to do a brand specific certification because that's what's in your area, fabulous. Make sure that you like the teachers, that the studio is great, that the clients are great. But as you're learning, go take sessions in different studios on different brands of apparatus. And you can do this from the very beginning of your training so you can feel out the differences in the springs, in the machines, and how they work. If you have to do one of the franchise chain studio trainings, because again, that's what's in your area, that's what you have, fine. But make sure that you're also taking continuing education workshops so that you get the rest of the exercises that may have been taken out of your training and the rest of the apparatus that might not be within that particular chain studio. So while I would love it to be that you could just go into any Pilates teacher training program, do the work, get a piece of paper, and be able to go and ply your trade anywhere, unfortunately, the world of Pilates certification right now is a shit show, and you need to beware. This is a buyer beware scenario where you really need to focus on what you want to get out of that training and then go get it. So I hope you found this helpful. As always, if you love the podcast, please, 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 you can go to Apple Podcasts, you can go to Spotify, you can even go to Podpage or Podchaser. The links are all in the show notes, and leave a rating, and if you can, a written review. You can also go to my pod page, link is in the show notes, or just go to pilatesgoddess.com. You can leave me a voicemail. You can send me a message. You can let me know exactly what you thought of this and maybe what you'd like to hear from me moving forward. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks, as always, for listening. Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.